Many incorrectly believe the 604 was solely a sedan. However, other body styles have emerged with varying levels of success. We think of the Pichon-Para station wagon or the Landaulet Chaperon, both made in two copies. In comparison, the large 100 limousines built by Eliès would almost be considered mass-produced vehicles. But, in truth, and all proportions kept, these stretch limo version Peugeots did not have any more success than their Matrix, despite the considerable efforts made by the coach builder to increase their refinement. Suffering from the same fundamental deficiencies as the sedan, and despite the commercial support of Peugeot, the 604 HLZ did not meet the fate it deserved. As too often with French manufacturers, the climb was probably too high, but time has done its work. And under the gaze of today's collector, the car has a very particular charm that is not only due to its extreme rarity, When the 604 made its first public appearance at the Geneva Motor Show in 1975, its manufacturer did not hide its ambitions. Few remember it today, but the car benefited from a nothing less than lavish launch, including, among other things, a major promotional campaign and support from artists like Sylvie Vartan or Jean Topaz. A vehicle of conquest, the model is highly anticipated. Indeed, this is the very first Peugeot with a six-cylinder engine since before the war. The 604 also embodies the culmination of a range that, since the 203 of 1948, has progressed step by step, accompanying the growth resulting from the glorious 30, and in the same way, the very gradual social rise of a clientele certainly conservative but not disdaining to display its material success. Presented more or less unofficially as a kind of French Mercedes, the new French high-end will, however, very quickly disappoint those who have abandoned their German sedan in its favor. Initially conceived as a replacement for the 504, the large Peugeot suffers from several shortcomings due to the stinginess of its designers. Thus, the ordinary finish and the questionable performances of the 5.6 Peugeot, Renault 5 Olvo, as thirsty as they are underperforming, do not allow the 604 to play credibly in the Garden of Munich or Stuttgart. The serious Peugeot house doesn't stop there and strives to correct the situation. In this way, as early as the fall of 1977, the arrival of a Bosch 4 G-tronic injection and a 5-speed gearbox, which should have been offered from the start, significantly improved the performance, energy balance, and user-friendliness of the new 604 Ti. The mechanics capable of synchronizing the carburetors of the SL version can be counted on the fingers of a one-armed man. But at the high end, some mistakes are unforgivable in the eyes of a particularly demanding clientele, for whom a more competitive selling price than that of a BMW Series 5 is not necessarily a decisive argument. Very early on, therefore, the die is cast for the unfortunate Peugeot, which from then on will only be a figurehead in the Sochaux catalog, sales quickly becoming anecdotal with about 15,000 units per year on average. However, the model is not without its merits, and its design, although very classic but stately, inspires vocations. In this way, if the Lion has not planned to extend the 604 range beyond the sedan, the dynamic coach builder Eliès decides for his part to tackle it from 1976 onwards, by developing a limousine on this basis. At that time, the offer in terms of large French sedan with long chassis is summed up to the Citroën 110 Prestige, certainly lengthened and raised compared to its Matrix, but in proportions that are after all measured. As for the 604, the Eliès project turns out to be significantly more ambitious as the length of the car progresses by 62 centimeters, exclusively devoted to the wheelbase, to now reach 5.34 meters. Unveiled on the Eliès stand at the Paris Salon in 1978, the final 604 HLZ is only marketed 2 years later, for an additional 43,000 francs excluding taxes and options. As we'll see, there are many of them. The car identically takes over the engines offered at that time. The customer can choose between the 5.6 Peugeot, Renault 5 Olvo of the TI and STI, developing 144 horsepower, and the 4-cylinder diesel Indinor of the SRD Turbo, whose 80 horsepower hardly seems suitable for the size or weight of the car. Eliès did not skimp on the layout possibilities. Thus, you can get a 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8-seater cabin, air conditioning, various woodwork, a level corrector, a rear sunroof, an interior entirely covered in leather, a padded roof, a driver's partition, or even a radio telephone. Also available in a taxi version, the 604 Limousine will, however, not manage to convince professionals in the sector, probably due to a high price and its size considered as out of the norm. Eliès and Peugeot can therefore really only target a necessarily limited prestige clientele. The high administration, embassies, large delivery companies, and a few personalities like Philippe Bouvard will ensure the bulk of sales. Extremely comfortable, it benefits from a careful realization that smells good craftsmanship in some respects. In the brochures made at the time and very rarely distributed by Peugeot dealers, the staging presents a luxury of good goose and French style. But nothing helped. And while the two planned partners were running in 1978 a production of 200 to 300 copies per year, only 124 limousines came out of the Liège workshops until the summer of 1984. Nowadays, the 604 HLZ can of course only attract madmen who, like your servant, are likely to fall in love with the model. Less mythical than the Landaulet SM made by Chaperon for the presidency of the Republic, less sought after than the 110 Prestige, the 604 Limousine is nevertheless more fascinating for perhaps elusive reasons. Like the sedan from which it derives, this very endearing car is not just a list of its shortcomings. With a boldness that Peugeot has not been capable of for a long time, it ventured into an unknown and harsh territory where indulgence does not exist, especially when you carry a logo too popular from the point of view of conformist minds to be able to adorn the grille of a luxury car. A luxury nevertheless very much present, because it is no longer a question here of a robotized and standardized production, but of a realization largely ensured on demand by innkeepers, cellarmen, and cabinet makers who love their work. The exception is also this, and like a Ford Granada Coleman Milne or a Rover 827 Regency, the 604 transformed by Eliès, if it has not been able to find its clientele, at least deserves our respect.